Hello and welcome everybody. I just wanted to thank you for spending time with us and taking time out of your evening to join us in this discussion. My name is Lori Esteve, for those of you who don't know, and I'm the founder of SOBS, and you are joining us for our second in a series of Google Hangouts sponsored by SOBS to just have an open dialogue and a little bit of discussion about things that are important to us and what's kind of happening in the community. But basically, this event tonight is an opportunity for families, nurses, doctors, clergy, anyone else who has been touched by the loss of a baby to just connect and share and, just kind of witness and learn how to be an advocate for change for the community. The discussion tonight will center around parental rights, policy versus law, training versus telling, and standard of care changes bereaved parents are asking for. A little about Google Hangouts for those people who have never done one before. When you open your window, if you click the expand screen, which is over on, I believe, on your lower left-hand side, it'll make your screen bigger, and then you will have an option over to the left that is a Q&A button where you can kind of interact a little bit with some of the speakers to ask a question or to make a comment or anything like that. Just kind of click that little button over there and type your question in and send it, and our contributors will be able to see your question and kind of comment a little. Okay, so with that, let's kind of get started. We're still waiting for one of our guest contributors to get logged on here, but we're going to go ahead and get started because we know that we're on a time limit. So yeah, we have a pretty wonderful panel joining us tonight. First of all, we have Sherokee Ilse. Sherokee is such a sweet friend, and I just love her. Excuse me, I'm sorry. She is such an advocate for this community. She's an author, an educator. She's a trailblazer in this community. And her book is Empty Homes, which I have one here. I happen to have it, and I just love this book. It's great because a lot of the parents who are new to this journey, this is their first contact with some written kind of like guidelines and helpful tips and stuff. This is handed out in hospital delivery rooms, in doctors' offices. It's on bookstore shelves. So we just and we actually send it out with all of the cuddle cots that we send out. So this is kind of like the first line of communication that a lot of parents get. So we're really excited to have Sherokee here to join us. Sherokee, can you say hello?
Hello, and thank you, Laura. You're so sweet and kind. And yep, it is my mission in life here to try to help make it better for families. So I'm excited to be on this Google Hangout.
Thanks. Okay, and so we're still kind of waiting for Crystal to join us from Everly's Angels, but next we have Aimee Dearing, and Aimee is here with us. Aimee just recently lost her son Ace, very recently, and we really wanted Aimee to join us. She has a heart to really kind of become an advocate for the community as well, and just kind of really, support parents and maybe do some doula training, things like that. But I wanted Aimee to join us because her experience has been very recent, and we wanted her to share kind of in memory of Ace of, how things have changed a lot in recent years, but we still have a long way to go, and we just really want to advocate and kind of highlight those issues a little bit and see, what we can do as a community to kind of improve that a little bit. So Aimee, would you say hello?
Hello.
Okay, I'm so glad to have you. And again, we're still waiting on Crystal. Aimee, I'm actually going to have you go ahead and start a little bit and just share, go ahead and share what you're comfortable with, your story, and kind of take us through it, and we'll start from there.
Hi, I lost my son Ace last year in September at 20 weeks and 3 days. When that happened, I didn't know what to expect, what was going to happen. I had never had a loss. I have 4 living children before him, so I didn't know a lot of options. I didn't know what my rights were, and going into it, it was very scary. We ended up having to have a D&E from what my doctor thought would be best for me. My body wasn't responding to labor. But I made it very clear from the moment we got to the hospital that I wanted to see him. We wanted to see our son. We wanted to hold him. We wanted footprints. We wanted all those things. My doctor thought that that would be possible, and he didn't see why not, but the hospital thought otherwise for sure. And they just, from the beginning of getting there, no one really seemed to know really what they should be doing. Kind of like these things don't happen very often. They didn't know what to do. We were kind of pushed in the corner of the labor and delivery area to kind of, I guess, keep us away from more people. Which, I mean, I guess there's a good reason and a bad reason, but we just didn't seem like we were that really anyone was prepared to deal with us or knew what to do or how to help us. They were just kind of, they just felt out of place and didn't talk much when they came to our rooms. So when going in for surgery, we were told we weren't going to be able to come back to the same room. My husband had to take all of our belongings with him. They were going to send us somewhere else after the fact, and I ended up getting sent to they told me that I was going to go to palliative care, but they, I guess, didn't have room. They ended up sending me to an oncology floor. And when we got to the room that night, they said that my son had gone to pathology and they had to do things there to begin with, and that they would talk to me in the morning about getting him to our room. So the next day, we just kept asking, and we had a nurse that was trying to be helpful. She really was, not knowing what she was supposed to be doing because this wasn't what she ever dealt with. She worked in oncology. She finally came in and told me in the afternoon that next day that the pathology is telling her that it's not their policy to bring the baby, that they didn't know why I would want to see him, why anybody would want to see him, and that they just weren't going to do that. And at that point, we didn't really know what we were allowed to push for. We didn't know what we didn't know what our rights were. We didn't know how far we could go with it. And but I just really wasn't going to stop trying. So I told them that, I wasn't happy. I wanted to file complaints, and I had the head of oncology in my room filling out a report, and I then had the head of labor and delivery in my room asking me what had been happening and filling out reports. And they finally told me that she didn't know what was going on with pathology. She didn't, she wasn't in charge of that to be able to go get him. She said that she would go down for me and take a picture of him. But that was all she could do. And they were pretty much done with me, and they were ready for me to go home. They already had all my discharge stuff ready. She said I would have to come back the next day and get this picture that they would take because she couldn't get it printed for me in time, and left my room. And we were just kind of, my husband was like, do I just need to start freaking out on people, and what do you want me to do? Like, I'm not happy with this. And she walked back in a few minutes later and said she was going to try to get him for us, if that's what we really wanted. So they brought him up from the morgue, and it was just, they had him zipped up in a like a to-go Tupperware container, and inside that was his little casket, little box that they had him in. And I don't think that any of that was necessary. I feel like they should have had him a little more out and prepared. It just wasn't sensitive. There was nothing about it that was very kind or sensitive or caring about any of the situation. So they told us we could spend as much time as we wanted, but they were waiting outside. They had my wheelchair to leave, and it definitely wasn't like they were welcoming me to sit and spend hours with my son doing anything. It was like, here he is, if you'd like to see him, and then you can go. So me and my husband were with him for a little while, and we got our pictures, and we got to look at him and hold him. But they had dressed him, they had put a hat on him, and they had covered him. you know, all things that we would have loved to do. But, you know, we didn't get the opportunity to. He ended up then even actually being sent to the funeral home without our permission the next day, and there was just a lot of things that were very poorly handled that I have now decided it's going to kind of be my mission to fix these things with my hospital locally here, and then once I can get that done, trying to help other hospitals in Florida and around my area, and just be able to help parents to know what they're allowed going into this, because you're kind of already in shock and you don't know what to expect and you don't know what your rights are, and you just believe what the hospital's telling you because you'd like to think that they have your best interest at heart, but that's definitely not the way I felt about it, and I don't want anyone else to go through what I went through.
Well, you know, and one of the things when I heard your story, Aimee, and when I listened to it, what really strikes me a lot, and it was one of the reasons why I really wanted to have this conversation, is, you know, when I lost my son, that was 30 years ago, and when I listen to your story, it feels like you went through exactly the same things that I went through 30 years ago, and I would hope that we would be kind of moving along in how a better understanding of how to support bereaved parents and kind of, you know, make it the most comfortable experience, you know, that we can for parents. And you know, they're the special, they're the ones who are the specialty in this, and so they really need to know how to support bereaved parents, you know, through the entire journey. And so yeah, that's why it just really struck me as you know, wow, in 30 years we're still dealing with the same kind of stuff, you know. I mean, like, you know, rights to see the baby, and I mean, because like how many days was it that you finally got to see Ace?
It was about a day and a half before we saw him. And so I can't imagine, I mean, to me, he looked perfect, and I know sometimes I'm unsure of showing anyone else's pictures and things, and I know that if I could have seen him right after that, he, I'm sure, looked different. And, you know, those memories could have been a little different, but we just didn't have that opportunity.
Yeah, and that just breaks my heart. Sherokee, I wonder if you could kind of maybe comment a little bit, you know, about some of the things that Aimee had mentioned.
Yeah, I would be happy to. Thanks, Lori. So, first of all, we all want to give you a hug and say, we're so sorry. That shouldn't have happened to you. You deserved better, and I'm glad that you got to see him at all, but it could have been so much better, and I'm just really sad about that. So I join you in this mission. I've been doing this now for well over 30-some years myself, after having a miscarriage, a full-term son who was stillborn. First one named Marama, second, the full-term son was Brennan, an ectopic pregnancy, and 2 living children. So I've dedicated my life to try to change it, and that's what Empty Arms was about. If you would have been given that book and asked to read about page 7 to 29, you would have been aware immediately that you could see, that you could hold, that you could have a blessing or a baptism if that's what you wanted, that you could have involved your other children, just so many different parts of it. So the fact that that resource wasn't available to you, even if staff were uncomfortable and didn't know, you might have been able to read and, you know, made some better decisions, and you'd have something to show people. Wait a minute, it's not just my own personal need, you know, this is happening across the country and across the world. So sad about that, and sad that, you know, you didn't get to be in the right place where they had hopefully more training. But I do think that training is a real big part of it, and then I want to talk about advocacy. And Lori, if you get Crystal on, let's hope so soon, and you need to switch gears, just feel free to interrupt me.
Okay, absolutely.
So the training is really important, because the staff are a key to good decision making. When you combine that with something written, so you get more ways, people retain information in more than just hearing. Very few actually can really hear well, especially in a crisis. So written and modeling and visual and speaking, and then asking you, what did you hear? All of those, as a teacher, a former teacher, but always a teacher, I'm very aware that we need to engage all those different senses. And so I've spent the last 30-some years training staff all around the country. And what I try to explain to them is if they understand why, if they understand that the goal here is to help you, Aimee, and all those other moms and dads out there to be the parent, to act the parent, to take on the job, to have the opportunity to cut the cord, to snip the hair, to cuddle and rock and hold and dress and undress and put the diaper on and give the bath and all of those sorts of things. It's honoring that parenthood and giving you that chance to parent in the physical sense for this little time that you have. I just helped somebody here in Tucson, and they had their baby for 2 days, and I was there on and off every day at their request as their baby loss advisor and an advocate, really. And so when things weren't talked about yet, then I would bring them up. Like I said to Dad at one point, you know, this is going to be emotional for you to hear this. But I'm not going to protect you from it. I'm going to empower you to be fully informed, to be the parent of Lydia, and to do whatever feels right to you. So I said, Dad, some of our daddies have told us they either regretted they didn't or were glad they did. Take the time to pick the song that they might have chosen for the wedding dance and spend some time with baby with private do not disturb sign on the door and dance with her. And I said, and Mom, you can do that too. Now, most staff do a great job, really. A lot of them are doing a great job, though I do see us backing off and going back to those dark ages that you and I, Lori, know. But most staff who are trained pretty well, if they get footprints and handprints and they're kind and gentle and they encourage you to see and hold and they involve the other family, they feel really good. And they should. But what I want to say to any staff who are watching this is it can be so much better than that. Aimee had what I would call one of the worst experiences and having to fight for that. That shouldn't be. But if she hadn't had to fight, those things would have made her feel good to be able to do those things. And at least she got a little bit of time, though I'm so sad they were out the door waiting for you. That pressure is intense and not necessary. But we can take them to higher levels than that. And that's part of why I love to train staff. I like to say, okay, think about this. How many times will Aimee get to diaper her baby, get to bathe her baby, get to cut a little hair if there is any, get to take a footprint, get to hold and cuddle, get to try on outfits? You know, maybe once, maybe twice, maybe these 2 hours or these 2 days. So why would staff want to do that for them? Who's the parent here? So we need to explain the why behind what they're doing, and when they get the why, that they should be helping to fully inform you, to honor your choices, to remember that it's your baby, not the hospital's, to give you choices about testing or not testing, choices about taking your baby home after death, which I hope we'll get to talk about more later. Even if they wouldn't do that, the fact that that's your right in all but 9 states, you can should be able to easily do that. It empowers families then to say, oh, yes, I am the mother. Yes, I am the father. And what else can we do here? How do we make this as special, as memorable? When I train our baby loss family advisors, also called baby loss doulas, if someone is a doula, they get trained to do the loss work. I really teach them that it's important that they give those ideas forward, not tell someone what to do or that they must, but that they lay it out and fully inform, even if they're uncomfortable with it. And so we need to strive as a community, as a culture within our hospitals and clinics and beyond, to stretch ourselves and let people be the parent and not take away their rights. You had those rights, Aimee, and others do too. And it's unfortunate that staff are uncomfortable or haven't been trained well, and so they don't realize maybe what they're doing. But the trauma that you have in your heart and in your body and now in your life going forward was unnecessary. You had enough trauma already. So we can talk more, though, about training and about being an advocate. Do we have Crystal on yet?
No, I'm still trying to get her added here. I'm not sure what's going on with that. But yeah, so yeah, I really appreciate you covering that, Sherokee. I guess too, can you maybe touch a little bit on like maybe the policy versus the law, because I think that people get really confused, and like you said, they don't realize that they have rights and they can ask for their baby and that kind of thing, and maybe clarify that a little bit for some of our parents.
Sure. There's a book called Final Rites. I'm going to hold it up. Let's see if we can see it here. Final Rites: Reclaiming the American Way of Death. And in this book, it lists state by state the rights of families when they have a loved one die. Many of them, in the book, most of the time they talk about over 20 weeks, but they don't always talk about under 20 weeks. I've been collecting data on other states for under 20 weeks, and so has RTS. And so I have some paperwork here with what some of those states allow. But hospital policy, it seems, legal teams and uncomfortable staff who don't understand the significance of our rights and the significance of maximizing memories and minimizing regrets allow the policy to overtake our rights. So I'm involved, being consulted in a lawsuit right now that I won't give a whole lot of detail about, and I can't tell what state it's in. But in speaking with the attorneys, I clarified with both of them, it's common law, right? It's common law for us to be able to take care of our children, to be able to be the decision maker, to make decisions about seeing, holding, what we want to do with their bodies. We can sign that we want a funeral director or not, except in those 9 states. There's some issues there. And they said, absolutely, it is common law. It's not like tissue, even a miscarriage. It's not like, even a placenta. You usually get the right to make decisions about a placenta. It's not like necessarily a cyst, but even a cyst, if they've done the testing on it, potentially, you could take it with you, or an arm. So I know of people that took their arm, had their arm cremated, and when they are buried, they want to, or cremated together or whatever, they want to be whole. They don't want to be missing that limb or whatever. And so really, we have the right. What we have to be careful about is when we sign the form at the hospital for signing in. Because sometimes that form says, I've helped someone who had a miscarriage, and the form said you give us permission to make decisions about and take care of the tissue from any procedures. Now, a baby shouldn't be considered tissue, but the staff, the legal team, they might call it tissue, and then that's a whole nother, fight. But what I did with her was because I knew what she wanted was no testing and to take that little baby after a D&C. So we're talking, if I could be so bold, and I hope it doesn't hurt anyone's heart here, but we're talking pieces and blood and tissue. And she wanted to take that home with her. She and her husband wanted that. It was very important to them. They'd had other miscarriages. They hadn't done it well. They were going to do this one right. And the pathologist stopped us and said, no, you can't do that. I have the right to test. And we had strong, respectful conversations. And in the end, the pathologist did not agree to that. Even though what I skipped a part here, I had this couple, they crossed off. No, they did not want to agree to let the hospital take the remains. So they had the right on the form, they crossed it off, and still the pathologist wouldn't. So we had to leave that hospital, and I found her another hospital to go to where they honored her rights. But I was speaking with someone when I was in Asheville recently. I did a workshop on Friday, and the nurses there said, yes, but you can also rescind that consent form. You can say, I rescind it. So for all of you who are advocates who work with families or who want to work with families down the road, or maybe a relative, if they say, well, you've signed away your right, you let the hospital do that, you can tell them no. You could say, bring that form back. I'd like to initial it, I'd like to change it, or I want to speak in front of a witness. I rescind what I signed, and I want to have the right. So families clearly have the right in every state, a common law, to make decisions about their baby and their baby's remains. They just might be limited about whether they can actually take that baby home. They have the right to know what's going to happen if they let the hospital take care of. And again, I'm going to say this might hurt some of your hearts. I have had a miscarriage. I let them take care of my baby's remains because I didn't know what I didn't know. And so I join any of you if this is the case for you. But if the hospital decides to, their policy is to incinerate with other medical waste, and maybe that the remains end up in a landfill or some other place, it's really hard to hear afterwards. We should be told that. We should be fully informed before we make any decisions. So parents deserve to be fully informed, to be treated like parents, and to ask, if they say, well, you can't do that, then my advice to everyone is to say, what law are you referring to that takes away my common law parenting rights? What law? Can you show me that law? And if they say, well, that's hospital policy, then you can say, but what law is that hospital policy based upon? And could we get a funeral director on the line, and maybe you don't feel up to it, so maybe your mother or some advocate who's with you could talk to the funeral directors, because they usually do know the laws. And you could say, I want to know the law, I want to know what number, because you can look it up online on the internet. So we have to really be a strong advocate, and it's hard to do that in the middle of this, which is why we have our baby loss advisors and baby loss doulas being trained by me, and a team of my colleagues are getting ready to be trainers, where we can dig into this sort of questioning. And then I am always not, I'm not an attorney, can't say I'm an expert, but I can say that probably in the country I'm one of the people who knows more about how to be that strong advocate, what questions to ask. I know where to go and look for laws, and I know some of the questions that can help people advocate for themselves or for their loved one or someone they're caring for. Questions about that, Aimee or Lori? Did I miss something, or do you want me to direct it in some other way?
From my standpoint, I think that was a great explanation, and really kind of opened the information up to the parents and kind of, empowered them. Aimee, what about you?
Yeah, no, I'm getting lots of, I'm taking lots of notes right now. It's all good. Good.
Well, that's wonderful. I get a lot of texts. That's the common way to connect these days, it seems, at least for now. And I'll get texts from our baby loss advisors, and they'll say, okay, so the hospital wants to do this. The nurse wants to put the baby, I don't know if you know about saline submersion, but little miscarried babies can be put in, I don't have one, so I just want to take my glass of water and imagine this is either short or long, and it's a plastic container with a cover, and we can have material to wrap around it, or little outfits almost to make it softer. But when you submerge a baby in water, saline solution, much like amniotic fluid, they puff up a little bit more, and the red scent tends to go away, or let's say lessen. So it's been great for picture taking. It's been great for people who want to see their baby, maybe show the baby to the kids, and they felt that sunken look, which is, it's just really the baby doesn't have fat yet in the cheeks, and the rest of the body. And so people who want to use that have to be told about it. And this baby loss advisor said, well, the nurse wants to put the baby in a plastic bag, and I want to put the baby in a container, like I just showed you, if you could imagine that. And what should we do? And I said, well, what I want to remind you of is, when in doubt, rather than decide, check it out. Ask the parents what they want to do. Tell them about the bag, your concerns, tell them about the container, and then ask them to think about it for a little bit, and that you'll come back and give them a chance to ask you more questions and to answer it. And so in the end, she said, oh my gosh, why didn't I think about that? Sometimes these wonderful nurses who do get it, or even the nurses who maybe don't get it but are trying hard, they don't realize that they don't have to own all the decision making. In fact, they should own little of the decision making. But we can't just throw it to the parents who don't know what they don't know. We need to inform them of the options and the pros and the cons of those options, and then treat them like adults, treat them like the parent, and not protect them, but let them decide.
Mm-hmm. So, like, Aimee, from your standpoint, is that what you kind of feel like maybe hospital staff was trying to protect you from? I'm not sure. Do you think that they were just trying what they thought was best, or how did you feel that that was coming across?
I don't think that that is what they were doing. I mean, I had been very well informed by my doctor as exactly how my son was. So I mean, yes, he was very tiny. He was, 20 weeks old. But for us, the image they kept trying to put in my head, this pathologist, and was such a worse thought that I would have, mental picture I would have had been left with if I had never seen him. Because to us, he was, perfect. But we knew, our doctor had told us exactly. I mean, even though having the procedure, the only thing that was wrong was one of his arms was slightly detached. I mean, even I didn't look him completely over, but my husband did. And I mean, that's nothing that we couldn't deal with. I mean, my husband had asked the doctor to be completely, brutally honest because I want to be prepared. And he had. So, and even the people we talked to, the nurses that were trying to get him, get ACE for us, we told them, we know what has happened, and even then, still, they, made sure they put a blanket around him before they brought him to us, and I didn't need them to do that, and so I think maybe that could be their excuse or their reasoning when it comes down to it, but I don't really think that is justified because I made them aware that I knew what was wrong, and I can handle it. I don't need you to baby me in this. I can handle it. Bring him there. So I think that they could try to use that as an excuse to justify what they did, but it really isn't justified because we were fully aware and we knew and were prepared for what was wrong. So to me, it was just more of a lack of, they just didn't want to have to deal with it. They just didn't think that it was, I don't know if they thought maybe I would get emotional and then they'd have to deal with me, and they were ready to send me packing already. So they're like, this is going to, make this even a longer process getting her out of here. We let her see him, and it was unnecessary.
Could I comment on this uncomfortableness, Lori?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. I understand why people are uncomfortable if they have no experience or little experience, or their experience consists of doing it quickly and getting people out the door. So they don't see the whole process. They don't see the love in your eyes. They don't see how beautiful it is. I'm thinking about this couple I helped. I mean, I made sure everybody in their family rocked that baby. Even if they didn't think they wanted to rock that baby, I said, you don't want to regret that later. So please give thought to, I never push anybody, but give thought to rocking. And so the staff kept coming in and seeing, and they were helping too, with various things. But that staff had good training. They, by and large, they knew what was going to come. They knew about rights and options. They knew the importance of parenting that needed to go on. And I'm actually looking at a study right here from Katie Gold, How Physicians Cope with Stillbirth or Newborn Neonatal Death. And in it, one of the things they assessed was how comfortable are you with helping families when they have a baby die. And I've seen such studies also with nurses. And the big key here is if they have training, and I'm going to say good training, if they have training that really digs in and helps them to understand how and what and why, not just what the checklist is, not just what we're trying to accomplish here, but why. What's the foundational principles that guide us back to being a good parent, helping them be a parent, to helping them maximize their memories, to slowing things down, not rush, so that they can make more thoughtful decisions, to fully inform, those kinds of foundational pieces. And then practicing and watching videos and hearing letters and hearing stories about how to do this and why people found it helpful and what wasn't quite as easy. So when staff are more comfortable, you can almost always count on the fact that either or both they had an experience themselves and it went pretty well, or they know that it didn't go well and they're going to fix it to help other people, and or they have really good training. And so I, in many times, I have my team, the people that I'm training, I give them a competency test that my colleague Suzanne Helzer and I designed. It's a competence assessment, really, and it's what do you know about, how comfortable do you feel about this, and talking about grief, and talking about couple communication, and showing them the baby, and baptism, and blessing, and where things are, and handing them good materials, and then at the end we have them take it again. And the growth and the comfortableness, I'm not going to say ever 100% comfortable, because even I'm not, but the comfortableness with I can do this, the confidence. I just spoke with someone who was at my training on Friday, and she said, you know, before, she's a doula, before the training, I was just so scared. How do I help somebody when they have a baby die? How do I help someone who has a miscarriage? And recently, someone she is close to had a miscarriage. So that would mean in the last 4 days. And she said, I can't tell you how more confident I felt. I treated her like the parent. I said important things that were validating her pain. Just that one day of training helped me so much to know how to be of support. Even though she didn't know what the exact words were, she had the philosophy behind it all that drove the words. So we need to not be training people, here's the list and here's what to do. That is not enough. That's important, but it's not enough. We need to explain the why and the how it can be done that raises their confidence level and raises their competence level so that they aren't so nervous and full of fear and wanting to get people out the door like they did, Aimee. I think it's very possible that that staff might not be very well trained. And it can actually pretty easily be solved with good training, with great mentorship, with conversations with people who do get it. So that's one of my goals in life right now.
Yeah, I'm so glad that you touched on that too, Sherokee, because I know when I talked to Aimee a little bit about her story, you know, part of the thing is that it's more like what the staff does do. It's like maybe a checklist, like, yes, I mentioned this to the parents, I gave them this handout, I gave them this, you know, bereavement box, that type of thing. But they don't really, they're not really interacting or present. Like you said, I think that it's more for a fear that they're maybe uncomfortable, their level, whatever, that we've got to get past that. But I mean, like when Aimee had, you know, mentioned her bereavement box, it was just kind of, it should have been something very special to her, but it was kind of like haphazardly kind of just laid on the bed with missing parts, and I think too it's not a very good thing when you just hand people a bunch of brochures to read in the middle of you know, when they're grieving and they're upset. You know, the last thing you want to do is sit down and read a brochure. I know when I lost my son, they gave me all these books to read and everything. You know, I didn't open those books for 6 months after. Yes, that information would have been very, very helpful at the time, but I didn't have the frame of mind to sit and read about it.
Right.
So it would be so much more beneficial if staff could just kind of get more comfortable with the fact, with just sitting and maybe being with the family. And that's why I think it's so important. The baby loss doulas, it's, you know, more of a support system for the family versus, I know that staff is busy and the in and out kind of thing, it kind of ties them up a lot. But yeah, and I just love that. And that's like why, you know, I had mentioned the training versus the telling. You know, we're telling them to just, you know, check this list, you've done this, check that box, check that box. But with your training, you explain the how we're doing it and the why we're doing it, because like you had said, you know, you dance with your baby if you're the daddy, and I'm sorry, those kinds of things.
Right, yes. And I know that Crystal is on, and thank you for sharing that. That went to a deep place for you, Laurie. I mean, most people wouldn't even think about that, and that's the job of folks who are advocates and who are trained well, is to really stretch them. Could I just, I see Crystal's on us, I know we want to get to Crystal, but could I just model how I might, I'm not saying it's the right way, but how I might present that box?
Sure, absolutely.
So if I'm going to present it to you, Aimee. If I had that box and it was full of materials and memento ideas and, you know, some literature and maybe a blanket, or, you know, I don't know what all would be in there, but so I might say, Aimee, and what's your husband's name?
Zach.
Aimee and Zach, I have a really special box that's full of all kinds of wonderful things here that can be helpful to you. And I wonder if we could just sit for a while and maybe I could show you a little bit about what's in here. Probably not all of it right now because you have some important decisions to make. But would that be all right if I could do that? And then hopefully you'd say yes. And then I would say, this box was donated by families who've had loss, and they really want to enhance and make your experience really special. So there's a lot of mementos in here, but what I want to pull out right now is this book, this material to help you make decisions. Now, in the box also is a picture frame and a camera and some clothing. Those are things you're going to want in a little bit, so I just want you to know they're in there. Let's take a peek and you can see there's a lot of beautiful things in here. But right now, I'm going to take this one thing out that's a self-help piece that's going to give you guidance over the next few hours and days as you make decisions, because I don't want to overwhelm you. I want to empower you to make the best decisions and to maximize memories and minimize regrets. So if it's all right, let's set this little box aside, not too far away. You're welcome to look in. You're welcome to read that material anytime you're ready. But let's focus right now on what you're going through, what's going to happen next, and what some of your decisions are and the pros and the cons. And I would dig into that little piece of literature with your permission. Does that feel different to you than how it was done? And can you comment on, as a parent, how you might respond? I know you're not in the middle of the chaos of it right now, but your thoughts about that?
No, I mean, that would have been so much nicer. I was told I wasn't even going to get it because I wasn't going to be birthing. So when I got out of surgery and was taken up to my room from recovery, I didn't even know it was there. My husband, when I got brought into the room, said that our doctor had told us the footprints were in there that he had taken, but it had just been shoved down by my feet on my bed when I got wheeled up. I didn't think I was even going to get it, and it had a couple different size hats, and it was just very random that they must have these in a closet, and so they just pulled one out and stuck it on my bed as I left. Definitely not anything that was personalized or taking the time to even make sure it was appropriate what was in there.
So if I were the nurse and I had done something like that, then how do you think you might have felt? Because I think if nurses are watching this, maybe they can get feedback from you. It's more than just my opinion, my experience.
I mean, it would have been such a better thing. There were things in there that I could write in, and it would have been nice to have those when I was sitting there for a day and a half, almost 2 days before I even had ACE. That I could have just been maybe gathering my own thoughts, and if it would have been wonderful if your book had been in it. Now I want to find out how to get those donated to our hospital. I want to figure out how I can get them in those boxes. For her to be able to say, yeah, you might want to take the time to read some of this. I mean, a lot of times you're there for a while before you actually have your baby, and it would have been something. I mean, I literally felt like I sat there and stared at the wall because nobody was really talking to me at all. So that would have been
okay. Well,
it would have been a big help.
Yeah. Well, thank you. I know, Laura, you want to go to Crystal. We've been waiting for you, Crystal.
Yeah. So I just want to make a little quick, brief introduction to Crystal. Crystal Hopkins is joining us, and Crystal is the founder of Everly's Angels. Everly's Angels was founded in memory of her daughter Everly, who passed at 11 months. And I want Crystal to just share a little bit of her story with us, because her story is very, very important for a number of reasons in this topic that we're discussing. And the memory boxes, that's one of the things that her foundation does, is dedicated to bringing memory boxes to the local hospitals, as well as pots and other supportive things for parents and that type of thing. So, Crystal, hello.
Hi. Well, first, let me apologize for my late entry. And we had a couple two techies here trying to get us in. I'm not sure if me and the computer weren't getting along tonight, but I did see you ladies earlier, so I do know it works. Thank you for the introduction. You are correct. My sweet little girl, Everly, was 11 months when she left us. She was born in February of 2014, and she was born with a genetic condition called trisomy 18. I didn't know anything about it really. I had heard a little bit early on in my pregnancy, but she was diagnosed with it at 5 days old, and in a nutshell, it's a genetic condition that is considered life-limiting and has just with it so many components that make thriving in life difficult, but not impossible. So we had hope, but it came from other parents. It didn't come from the medical staff. It was a very negative, really just sad, oh, poor you because of this diagnosis. And we chose to, when we took her home from the NICU, we chose to enjoy and celebrate every day that we were given with her. So we decided to create a bucket list and live every day with her as if it were the best day ever. And we weren't counting on how many days left. And I remember even at a certain point that we were counting every week, and then it became like week, 60 or excuse me, week 34 or 35. We were doing days and then we switched to weeks. Sorry, we were doing days and then we ended up switching to weeks because she kept living past what they told us that she was going to live. So we switched to weeks at that point. So we just enjoyed every day with her, and we knew early on because of her diagnosis that her passing could happen at an earlier age than some other conditions. And so, I mean, in her condition, less than 5 to 10% survived to see 1 year. And so we decided just to kind of enjoy that time. And my mom had done a little research, and she found that there are some countries who they bring their child home with them, or they have them at home when they pass. And she approached me with this idea when Everly was about 2 months old, and immediately I knew when I heard it that that was something that I wanted to embrace and wanted to think about. And so we definitely enjoyed that time. We definitely enjoyed the time, but we kind of had in the back of our mind, if that happens, this might be an option. So we spoke with hospice and told them about this device that my mom had found. She had found it's called the cuddle cot, and I missed some of what y'all discussed, so you may have touched upon this. You haven't, okay. So she discovered this machine called the cuddle cot. I called or I emailed the company and asked where there was one. Hospice hadn't heard of it, and at the time there was only 6 in the country, and there wasn't one anywhere near us. The nearest one was Noblesville, and so we knew that that wouldn't be an option. It wasn't a device you typically have in your house and can buy. So we were just trying to kind of figure out how we were going to do this. And fast forward to when Everly was 11 months, and she began heart failure, and we sought out additional medical help for her in Atlanta. She did pass away while we were there, and we live in Tampa. And when we kind of came up with this plan to spend time with her once she passed, state lines weren't really something we'd ever considered or contemplated. And it didn't change what our hearts had been for the 9 months between the time we learned of that. And I remember even when my mom mentioned it, she kind of had to preface it by saying, well, in some countries, because it's such a foreign concept here. I hadn't even heard of it. So when she did pass away, we told them right away that we would like to bring her home with us. And, I was really with Everly, and I was not involved with any of the discussions. When you lose a child, you're just in another place. And I just remember a few hours later, we were being wheeled out, and Everly was in my arms, and
It's beautiful.
That was it. I mean, it wasn't a fight. It wasn't difficult. But as I have since learned, and I have since presented this idea and concept and spoken to other hospitals about it, it does seem to be a foreign idea here in the States. It is something that is unusual. And not only did we bring Everly home with us from Atlanta, we carried her the whole way home. We did not have the use of the cuddle cot. We had her on bags of ice. I'm not going to say that we actually kept her on the ice the whole time we were holding her. And, you know, I just think of that time very fondly. It was a horrible time as far as that we lost her. I cannot begin to tell you what a sweet and precious time it was in the van, 8 hours with just her. And it was such a precious time. It was myself, my husband, and my mother. And it just was precious. And when we came home, we wanted to keep her for a couple of more days. And so we did. We worked it out with the funeral home, and it was an unbelievable time for us to make memories. And Sherokee, one of the things that you've said that is you know, we've kind of adopted it as our motto, is to maximize memory making and minimize regrets. It is the single most important thing I think that we can do for other families. And while we're talking about advocating for changes, is that we, when we're in that situation, have no idea what we need. We don't know what we want. We don't know what options are available. And if we empower other moms and we empower the staff, then we can share that information and we can let families know this is an option. Listen, what we did and have Everly home with us for an entire weekend may not be everyone's cup of tea, and that's okay, but at least having choices when you feel like all your choices are taken away is empowering, and it does give families that time to make proper decisions that's best for them. And so with us and having that time at home, we had talked to the boys. We have 2 other boys, older boys, about it. They knew that she was coming home with us. We had a photographer at the house. And I just, ladies, it was unbelievable. And for anyone listening or watching, I just wanted to let you know that in some states it's legal. In some states it's, you know, people do it. It's not often, it's not common, but it can be. It's, I don't remember, Sherokee, you know better than I think, was it 35 states it's legal?
39.
39, okay. So that's a lot. That's a lot. And I don't think many people know that it's an option. And we spent time, we rocked her, we had her in our bed, we talked to her, we did handprints with paint, we did pictures, each child had a special time with her. It was a very special, just beautiful time. It wasn't morbid, it wasn't scary, it wasn't, even the children agreed, it was just a special time with their sister, and we didn't feel hurried. We didn't feel rushed to say our goodbyes. And I wish that it could be this way for everybody. And Aimee, you know, my heart hurts for you and your experience, and I knew your story, and it just hurts that that was your experience. And I wish that that more people in the medical community would know what that experience does during that time does to you long term, and they could see the after effects and the heartache that remains. Not only do you have the loss, but then you have how it was handled. Right. So it's a double whammy. So I'm just glad that we're able to have this discussion, and maybe someone's eyes will be open to other options that are out there, and just providing people the choices.
Right. And if I could jump in real quickly, Lori, I'm just so grateful that you did that, and you've shared with people how important that was to do it, and how beautiful, and that you didn't feel rushed, and you had such special time with her. The Amish do this. A lot of Native American tribes, this is acceptable for them. In New Zealand, pretty much everyone does.
Yes.
In Holland. We just need to open up the option and understand the beauty of it. I want to share that on my website. I have created a booklet called Bringing Baby Home. Mm-hmm. And it tells the how and the basics of the how and the why, and really kind of gives people a guide as to why would I do this, and what are the steps, what do I need to know, how do I find out what my laws are, and things like that. And in those states that do not allow this, what they don't allow is that you act as your own funeral director, but they may allow if you work with a funeral director and say, will you help me bring my baby home? So even states like Michigan and New Jersey and New York and some of these other states where it's a problem, if we can just find some good funeral directors who get it and ask them to help facilitate this process. They maybe can't drive their own baby in their own van. Maybe they can, but they, somebody could do that, and they could have that child at home with or without the funeral director there. I know that it's been done before in some of those states, so we don't want to say it's not an option.
Right. And Cherokee, if I could just also add this, I don't want people thinking that we just willy-nilly had Everly and we weren't underneath any kind of care from a funeral home. I do want to point that out. We did have a funeral home that helped us from Atlanta make that transition across state lines, and then even here there was some paperwork that was involved, and they knew that we were here, and there were some guidelines.
Right, but I want to say, I mean, that's great, it probably helped you, but in 39 states that's not necessary. So one can consult with a funeral director or with the vital statistics or the public health. I love funeral directors for what they do, so I'm not trying to suggest we don't connect with them. But in 39 states, you, the parent, can act as the funeral director if you wish, can consult with other funeral homes, can do your own paperwork. It's just, it's people have a right to know that. I'm not saying you should or shouldn't. I don't know. But I use them as resources all the time. But people can act as their own funeral director.
Yeah. Well, Crystal, I'm so glad that you were able to join us and share that story, your story a little bit, because I think it's so important in this country. I mean, it's so death that we kind of hide from it a little bit and really kind of put it behind closed doors. And in the UK, places like the UK, they take their babies home and they have them home with them for several days until burial and things like that. So family members can come in and meet the baby so they can make the memories, that you had spoke about. And that time becomes really so precious. And like you said, you never know what your heart's going to need to, to move through the grieving stages until you're in it. So to try and make it cookie cutter that everybody is, nobody's going to want to take their baby home or spend time and do the memory things that you did with Everly. It's just, it's sad that we don't offer these options to our families, and even more so when a baby dies. I mean, people don't like to talk about death at all, but when a baby dies, then it really becomes like, oh wow, we don't want to really, approach that or discuss it, and just kind of like with poor Aimee, let's just handle the event right now and kind of package them all up and send them on their way. There's not a lot of kind of like compassion or I don't know, companion that goes along with it. I'm not sure, but yeah, I'm so glad you were able to join us and share about Everly's journey a little bit.
We're just glad that we had the ability to do that, and that we had the idea ahead of time. We'll always be grateful for my mother who found it. I didn't know anything about that, and that we were able to, and we've had a couple families contact our foundation to try to help their navigating this road, and we have not been successful with that, and that's something that we're going to have to kind of look up a little bit more, how to be able to help more effectively, because people are hearing. And I remember when the photographer first heard what she was coming to photograph, she was worried, she was nervous, and she spoke with me after, much later, and she said, I didn't know what I was walking into, and she said it was the most beautiful experience. Awesome. And it wasn't what she expected. And listen, I've not done it before. I didn't know what to expect. I just knew what my heart was telling me was the right choice for our family.
Right, and what you were doing is you were being the parent, and you were coming up with your own ideas, and it felt right to you. And that's what we have to do, is empower and teach the parents of their options, and then let them decide and make it real and make it special. Lori, I know we have to wrap up. I'd just like to suggest one thought here I want to put on the table. If you're a nurse, a doctor, a therapist, a parent, a grandparent, and you feel like, oh my gosh, I wish I would have known that, I would have told someone that, I wish we could have done that, why didn't I do that? It's real easy to beat ourselves up and feel badly that we didn't get to do things that others now, like you, Crystal, that you got to do. But can we leave people with this thought, that we did the best with what we had and what we knew at the time. And it's really about forgiving ourselves in that realm, and realizing that we can't change the past, but we can maybe help other people in the future. And I made a lot of terrible choices, my husband and I did, We didn't show our son to anyone. We have no pictures. It was really the dark ages. But you know what? I can help other people, and in doing so, I feel a lot better. But I'm not going to be guilted for the rest of my life for making choices that I didn't know could have been different at the time. So please forgive yourself and your staff if you can, and we just do our best.
Yeah, that's a great way to kind of end this. And Sherokee, if you could just share your website a little bit in case anybody wants to check out the training,
Sure.
your books. I love your books. They go out with all the cuddle cots, and then I will have Crystal kind of tell us a little bit about Everly's Angels, and we'll finish up.
All right. So babiesremembered.org is my main website, and it really gives a lot of guidance for people, and there is an e-shop at the far right side on that website. And then babylossfamilyadvisors.org. However you spell it, advisors work. So babylossfamilyadvisors.org, where you can find someone who will be an advocate for you. And by the way, Crystal, use that and use me if you need to as go-to people when folks are having trouble. We can sometimes make things happen. I've been known to sit on the phone with funeral directors and work on convincing them to do it differently. So Babies Remembered and Baby Loss Family Advisors, both.org. Thank you, Lori.
And Crystal, and I mean, Sherokee, you travel all over the United States putting on classes. So location's not really an issue, a problem, and we'll get the staff trained and comfortable.
That's right.
And Crystal, you want to share a little bit about Everly's Angels?
Everly's Angels is a nonprofit foundation, obviously created out of after Everly passed away, and we really support families who have just gone through loss at any stage. So in the immediate stages, we provide the memory boxes, much like Sherokee and Aimee spoke about, but not necessarily the boxes that were randomly kind of gathered. And Aimee, I would love to be able to have given you one of ours at the time. But inside of our boxes, we actually have different items to create the memories, maximize that memory making, and minimize regrets. And inside each box is Empty Arms by Sherokee, so that each family can take one of those home with them. So that's what's included. And then the other thing is just because we are such believers in our foundation, and all of the members of our foundation, such believers in that time that you have with children, with their babies, is that we really just want to give that opportunity. So we are striving to get the first cuddle cot here in Florida hospitals. Like, we are working hard to have that happen. Yeah. So we really want families here in Florida to have the benefit of one of those or many of those cots, so that they have that time. And I can't tell you how many stories we've heard as we've been working towards this, of situations that would have come, a cuddle cot would have come in handy, that extended family weren't able to come and spend time because it took too long. There was one situation, there was an adoptive family where the baby passed and they didn't have time to arrive to meet the baby they were going to adopt. That was a new situation. So all of these opportunities to have extended time is something that our foundation wants to help with. And then the last thing that we do is we provide support ongoing for families afterwards who reach out to us and let us know about their loss. Then they become one of the families that we care for. And we just send them periodic cards or notes or little things that we think of during the year at different times. October for pregnancy and infant loss, Christmas, different holidays. So, and our website is everlysangels.org. So thanks for that opportunity, Lori.
Sure. Yeah, Crystal, I'm so glad, too, that you kind of touched a little bit on the cuddle cots. For people that don't know or maybe wanted to find out some more information about the cuddle cots and that initiative, there is a Facebook page. It's called the U.S. Cuddle Cot Campaign Initiative, and it's a national initiative, and our goal is to get a cuddle cot into every single hospital in the United States. And while we know that every hospital doesn't deliver babies, every hospital has the potential to have a baby that's lost due to injury, illness, SIDS, anything like that. And we want those families to be able to have that gift of time as well. And Aimee is really passionate about that, and she's really helping SOBs from the Central Florida area, as well as with Everly's Angels, to try and get one into one of the hospitals here, because as of yet, with this campaign being right here in Florida in our own backyard, we have yet to place one. I think in part that's because our hospitals really are maybe a bit stubborn, and they think that what they're doing is sufficient. But like in Aimee's case, it's clearly, you know, we really need to listen to what the parents need, you know, and open our hearts to new and you know, things that'll make the experience more for the parents. So yeah, I'm glad to have Aimee help me do that here in Florida.
Yes.
Okay, so I'm sorry that we've went a little bit over. It's just 8:06, so we've about 6 minutes over. And I just wanted to thank you guys for joining us, and I look forward to seeing the feedback that we get. Of course, this is recorded, so we'll be able to post the link for anybody who wasn't able to watch live. And if you have any questions or wanted any more information, be sure to check out Babies Remembered, check out Everly's Angels, and then check out the Facebook page for the Cuddle Cots and see how we're doing as far as placements and things like that. So ladies, have a great night. Thank you so much.
Thank you for organizing it, Lori.
Good night.
Good night.
Bye.